Well, hello everybody. This is Dr. Kimberly Hubinet, and this is Live, Love, Survive, Thrive, a podcast about what it takes to move forward after losing a loved one. And what I have right now today is a special guest that, actually, I'm so blessed that he even said yes to come to the podcast here. But this is a person that you may or may not have heard about in the uh, the place of children's books. Uh, he's really well known as an author and as a philanthropist. His name is John Masiulionis. And he, speaking with him, we had a lot in common. And I'm going to actually introduce him and have him introduce himself. John, you want to say hello?
Well, hello, Dr. Kimberly, and thank you for having me. I really appreciate the special invitation and getting to know. You may hear a little Fred Rogers-ism because a lot of the work that I do is inspired by Mr. Rogers. So I use the term friends and neighbors. So it's great to spend time with your listeners and viewers at your podcast. Again, my name is John Masiulionis. I'm the manager of PR from the Heart, which is one of the largest PR publicity firms for children's inspirational and spiritual authors across the country and around the world. The author of the new award-winning children's book, Walking Each Other Home, Zachary's Mission, a Hospice for Children, published by Trolley Stop Publishing. And also just most recently, I became a certified animal communicator, which is inspired by the love of my life thus far, my 3-year-old little Shih Tzu Maltese, Little Forrest. So I've been helping pet parents connect with their furry friends. My little guy's right on cue, needless to say. I help pet parents to be able to connect with their furry friends in a very special and meaningful way as well, too. And I'm really looking forward to seeing where our conversation takes us today.
Yeah. Well, let's jump right into it. Like my listeners, obviously, the communication is that we've lost a loved one, whether it be a mom, a dad, a brother, sister, best friend, sibling, and what it takes to thrive after that, because we all know that grief is a journey.
It's true.
And sometimes little baby steps are like a big mountain for us. And the the reason why we come together is that maybe somebody can hear something inspirational from our listeners. Maybe the person has something to interesting to say, and you know, we're just here to make each other smile a little bit. It's not to, be depressed or anything, because we're here to make a difference in the world. And the reason why we're still living is because there's something that God has chosen for us to do still. And so, I don't know if anybody's really religious or not religious, or, believe in spirituality here or believe in God, but basically, our person is surrounding us. And so let's let's go ahead and start saying, when life, you know, was bad for you, or tell me a little bit about what's your inspiration for your new book. Tell us about your new book.
I appreciate that. And the inspiration, not only for my book, but in everything that I do, goes back to my grandmother. Being part Polish, we refer to our grandmothers as Babcia. Babcia's Polish for grandmother and Jaja's Polish for grandfather. And I had a very strong connection with my grandmother growing up. In many respects and times throughout my journey when I didn't believe in myself, she believed in me. And when I was moving through difficult seasons of my life, she really extended unconditional love. every single time that I would spend time with her, if you're a child of a certain age, growing up in the 80s and 90s, you used to love going to your grandparents' house, right? Because, they would take you to the mall, or they would have the best foods and things of that nature. And I just remember loving spending time with my grandmother. And in fact, to put a smile and to bring some levity into our conversation, I remember my grandmother taking me to go see Wayne's World 2. So the follow-up to the
That's
smash
interesting.
hit comedy with Mike Myers and Dana Carvey, like, what grandmother takes their
Wow.
little one to go see Wayne's World 2? Well, my grandmother, Babcia. And we had a close relationship for many years. Unfortunately, there came a point in time where my extended family began to fragment a little bit. And there was a good number of years where I did not have the chance to spend time with my grandmother. But I did have the time to reconnect with her shortly before she passed. She had passed in the summer of 2013. And in many respects, shortly before that time, that's really where my spiritual awakening began, in many respects, before my grandmother's passing. But I remember things really began to shift and change after that. For well over 10 years, I was the host of and the founder of one of the longest running, most successful wrestling radio shows in the country called Monday Night Mayhem. At that point in time in my life, I'd also worked in the collections industry. I was the guy that would call up a person if they were behind on their credit cards. With full transparency, I would be the guy that would be very compassionate and understanding and take the series of post-dated checks and not, try to rip someone's head off, so to speak. During that point in time, I really learned about compassion and empathy and understanding. But I share all of this because, interestingly enough, the name of my wrestling radio show was called Monday Night Mayhem. And my life, in many respects, was mayhem. And so after my grandmother had passed away, I really began to see life through a new lens. I let go of the wrestling radio show. So I let go of Monday Night Mayhem on my end of things. And I really began to see life from a whole different perspective. And I knew that there was more to life than just professional wrestling, sports entertainment, and just stress. I knew that there was more to life, and I learned, and it took me some time, Dr. Kimberly, to realize that in life, it's about the we. It's about the collective we before it is about the I. And when we place our focus on service and how can I help someone, how can I support someone, it's interesting how the individual me gets taken care of. Shortly after my grandmother had passed, I started getting some strong visions of moving out to Southern California. I was in San Diego for the first time around the spring of 2005, if I'm not mistaken, right around the time where Pope John Paul II made his transition. This is during the time that I used to work at Blockbuster Video. Remember when we used to rent movies, right? And I remember being in San Diego for the first time, and I remember vividly having the most peaceful, restorative, blissful night of sleep in my entire life. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because, again, you fast forward many years later after my grandmother's passing, it almost felt like there was a calling, a divine calling that I needed to be in San Diego. And I also started getting some visions of eventually helping to create a children's hospice for terminally ill children in San Diego. Now, obviously, again, life will do its things. So shortly after my grandmother had passed, about 2 years afterward, I was given a testicular cancer diagnosis. So I literally had to face my own mortality and look at it in the mirror. And after that, it really took me some time, because at that point I was already beginning to do PR publicity work for children's authors and inspirational authors and spiritual authors. But I really did my part to trust my own journey, realize the fact that I was given skills and gifts and talents to really be of service to other people. And from there, things took off with my business. I made the cross-country move during the pandemic, during the heat of the pandemic, from Western New York, from Buffalo, New York, where I spent nearly the first 40 years of my life, and I moved out to San Diego. And, we fast forward now 5+ years later since that move. And as I mentioned just recently, I became a certified animal communicator. My grandmother's with me every step of the way. It's interesting because I feel that, our loved ones, they give us little gentle divine nudges, so to speak. But we have to be open, receptive, listening. So I remember my grandmother's favorite color is green. So every time I literally step outside my residence, I see green grass. It's one of the benefits about being in San Diego. My grandmother's favorite show was Jeopardy. So whenever I see, Jeopardy pop on the boob tube, as they say, I feel a connection with my grandmother. Anytime that I would remember going to the mall, instantaneous connection with my grandmother. So I do like to go to malls still. I might be one of the very few people. There's something very soothing about, taking a walk in the mall and just, reconnecting with old times here and there. But my grandmother's with me wherever I go. But one of the things that she has been reminding me of, and this is the last thing that I'll mention, because I look forward to more of your questions, is that it was important for me to move forward fully, to literally trust my next steps. And it's long since been said that even if you don't know what the full staircase looks like, you just take that next step. And this also ties into one of my other favorite beautiful quotes, because you had mentioned something similar to this when you had asked me the first question. One of my biggest sources of inspiration, in addition to my grandmother and the late Fred Rogers, is the late Dr. Wayne Dyer. And shortly before he passed, he co-authored a book called Don't Die with Your Music Still Inside You with his daughter, Serena. And he would remind people when he did talks across the country and around the world, he would remind all of us that we all have music to play, skills, gifts, talents. And it's really important in this world that we're living, especially for those who are tuning into this episode of your podcast in real time. It could really look like things are difficult and challenging, and maybe to a certain extent that they are. But we're being reminded that each one of us has a divine purpose, that when we take the time to trust our next steps and when we move forth, even if we don't know what the whole thing looks like, that everything will be provided for and that life can become more fulfilling, beautiful, enjoyable, and then some along the way.
So, was there ever a point in your life where you were at the lowest, lowest, lowest? And can you explain when life was at its lowest? What did you do and how did you rebuild yourself?
I really appreciate this question too, because one of the things that life has taught me is to remain humble. I am no better than anyone else who walks the planet. That said, it's important to still believe in myself and everything like that. But I remember there was a point in time where I literally had to go through the system, meaning going through the system, I almost lost everything in terms of my home, my finances. There was a point in time where literally all I had to eat in my pantry when I lived in Western New York was a 5-pound bag of pasta and Ilio Di Paolo's marinara sauce. Now, Ilio Di Paolo's is a very well-known Italian restaurant in Western New York that's owned by my dear friend Dennis, who's very much a father figure in my life. And he is the inspiration for one of the earth angels in Walking Each Other Home, Zachary's mission, a hospice for children, along with my grandmother. I'll talk a little bit more about the story as well shortly. But I remember when I didn't have any food, Dennis said, here's what I can do to help. He gave me a 5-pound bag of pasta and a couple of cans of Di Paolo's marinara sauce. And I literally realized at that point in time, like, thank you, God. I didn't have to go hungry. There was a time where I was almost going to be evicted from my residence, and the exact amount that I needed for my rent to come through came through the form of a new client that I had worked with. This was back, I think, in 2016, 2017. So, even though it may seem like, things have transformed in many respects. I mean, I'm in such a better position now than what I was beforehand. But I don't forget those times because life has a way of humbling us. And it's really important to take the time to reflect and understand how far that you've come, but knowing the fact that it's important to still continue to do the right things. It took me some time to really get with that whole we versus me thing that I had mentioned before. to really step into my highest, truest, and most authentic self. It took me some time to kind of get with the program on that. But through the different experiences that I've had between the loss of my grandmother and the testicular cancer diagnosis and nearly losing everything, finances and my residence, I mean, it literally came to the perceived lowest of the lows to really shake me up and wake me up. And I think that we all really have a choice. We can, those experiences in our life, they can serve as catalysts for opening our heart. They can really help to remind us that there's better experiences around the way, or we can continue to believe in the old mindsets, the old storylines, I think it was Dr. Wayne Dyer that would refer to it as the old Morse code. Da-da-da-da, I am stupid. Da-da-da-da, I am ugly. Da-da-da-da, I'm not going to amount to much in the world. There's these old stories that we continue to tell ourselves. Things that fuel older, not even just older stories, but older patterns, older habits that no longer serve us. And I think that, I've seen through my own journey different friends and colleagues, just people that have come into my life, and they may say something to the effect of, well, my grandfather was an alcoholic and my father was an alcoholic, so that means I'm going to be an alcoholic. We really have the opportunity to break free from older paradigms and older beliefs and really become the best version of ourselves than we even thought that we could be in many respects. The one thing that I also wanted to mention tied into that is my connection with my grandmother and my connection with God has really guided me through. One of the things, and you're familiar with the San Diego area because you had the opportunity to spend some time here, I find myself regularly at St. Joseph's Cathedral, which is one of the most beautiful cathedrals in the entire country, and I may even say the entire world. There's two things that I love to do when I go to church. One is sing church hymns. I feel there's something very nurturative and healing and restorative for my mind, body, soul, and spirit. And I also love to light candles for people. I'm the guy that will write down a list of 45 people to pray for, and I'll be the guy that lights 45 candles when I go to the cathedral. And whether it be growing up, I was born and raised Catholic, even though I really identify now as more spiritual and universal, I'm grateful for reconnecting with my Catholic roots, because growing up, everything from altar server, Eucharistic minister, CYO, church folk group, I did all of that. Reconnecting with my faith during this journey has been absolutely instrumental. And I'm not necessarily someone to force my own beliefs or thought processes down someone's throat. If anything, I give a gentle invitation to those listening, to those watching who might be struggling in some way, shape, or form, to remember that they're not alone, that there are people that care for them. And one of the greatest communities that you can create is with a local church or even some kind of a support group for men or for women, because we don't have to walk this journey alone. And in fact, there's a reason why the name of my children's book is called Walking Each Other Home, Zachary's Mission, a Hospice for Children. There's a well-known spiritual teacher who just recently passed not too long ago by the name of Ram Dass. And he had a beautiful quote that we're all here to just walk each other home. And when I first heard that quote, I thought of the staircase to heaven, the stairway to heaven for all those hard rock fans, I guess, if you want to use a rock analogy.
Yeah.
And knowing the fact that through every relationship, through every experience, it could be with a friend, a family member, it could even be the ex-boyfriend or the ex-girlfriend, right? Every single relationship is helping to open our heart and to help us walk us back home to become the highest and best and the most integrous versions of ourselves. And so knowing the fact that, again, like everything just has a way of coming full circle in many respects. And I share all of this from a mindset and a heart set of, even though I've had these life experiences and I do feel that I have a lot of wisdom to share, I realize the fact that I'm still learning each and every day. I by far don't have things down pat. It kind of took me a while to understand a lot and to really even become the man that I really am right now. But I'm grateful for the fact that I haven't given up. I'm grateful for the fact that I've had an amazing support system. I use the term earth angels in my children's book and throughout the course of my life. I feel that God sends us people on our path to lift our spirits, to lend us our confidence when we don't necessarily have the confidence in ourselves. And even if, how many times do we find ourselves praying for, God, I'm needing this particular person to help me. Like, I'm needing someone to help me with the brakes on my car, or I'm planning on moving this fall and I'm going to need someone to help me move, right? And it always happens on clockwork. There's people that come into our lives just when we need it. So I'm grateful. I'm grateful to have the chance to share my story with you, Dr. Kimberly, because one of the things that I really love about the work that you're doing in the world is you're helping people to share their stories. And when we take the time to share our stories, there's more healing that can happen, because if someone is watching or listening to one of your podcast episodes, and if they see Dr. Kimberly went through that and she moved beyond that, so that means there's a chance I can move beyond whatever it is that I'm moving through. It could be the addiction, it could be the illness, it could be the depression, whatever the case might be, the financial challenges. You can get through to the other side of that. It involves work, it involves discipline, it involves maybe a little luck along the way. But it's long since been said that luck is where preparation meets opportunity.
Is there something else I can help
And
with?
so, again, I'm really grateful just for everything and for the opportunity to have conversations such as these, because I feel that that's really where it all begins in many respects, is having open-ended and open-hearted conversations.
You've written more than just one book.
Just one book, actually, for now. There will
For some reason, I thought that you do help others with books.
That is true. And that is through the PR publicity work that I do. And so there's a beautiful synergy. One of the reasons why I love working with podcast hosts and producers, assignment editors, reporters, and anchors is because I feel that collectively, when we can help people share their stories, there's more magic that happens, there's miracles that happens, and we can utilize our platforms, television, radio, newspaper, podcast, online print. We can use our platforms to remind people that even if you are moving through the most difficult seasons of your life, that there's hope on the horizon.
Do you feel that you have reached a point where you are truly living your destiny and or is there still work that you need to get to a point where you feel like you're really doing the cause that you want?
I feel that the short answer to your question is yes. I feel that I'm where I need to be and where I've wanted to be for a long period of time. To add on to that, I feel that we're all works of art, yet works in progress. And each and every day when I wake up, I ask myself, what can I do to be a better version of myself today than I was yesterday? If I can just be 0.001% better tomorrow than I was today, as I like to say, mission accomplished, job well done. Obviously, if I can be, 5% better or 10% better, that's the plan. But one of the things that I'd like to share on that thread, and it even took me time when I first moved to San Diego in the fall of 2020, it literally felt as if I was living in San Diego, but not living in San Diego. It still felt that there were things that I needed to make peace with in the process, and especially making peace with myself. Forgiveness for me was maybe one of the things that took the longest to truly embody. I think that on some sort of level, we can all understand forgiveness. We can comprehend it, but really forgiveness begins with ourselves. And when we can take the time to forgive ourselves for, for the poor decisions, or for, how we treated ourselves, how we treated our minds, our bodies, our souls, our spirits, then we have a greater likelihood of being able to forgive other people. Because it's almost as if, those things that we're holding on to, it's kind of like that, 25-pound bag of crap that we just drag and we drag and we drag and we drag and we drag to the point where we are experiencing relationships through the lens of the past instead of through the lens of the present. And I would probably say just within this past year, I probably gotten to the point where if I can, if you hook me up to a polygraph and if someone said, John, do you feel that you have forgiven yourself? I feel that it's more of a resounding yes now than it's ever been. Now, is there still work to do? I feel that we all still have work to do. Going back to the whole works of art, yet works in progress. But I'm doing my part to understand the fact that I'm at this point now. It took me longer than what I would have wanted. I can look and see maybe, friends of mine who maybe I'm no longer friends with that I went to grammar school and high school with. Many of them have kids, they have families, and I just have a 3-year-old Shih Tzu Maltese. I'm a proud dog dad, a very proud dog dad. I haven't had the chance to become a father yet. And I feel that that is one of the things that I'm destined to do. And I know that I'm going to be a really good father when the time comes. But I feel that God has given me the opportunity to get my stuff in order, so to speak, to get my ducks in a row and to really connect with myself on the deepest of levels. Because if I can do that, if I can say, I love myself more than I've ever loved myself before in my entire life, I feel then the love that I can then give and express to my partner whenever she comes in, to my son whenever he comes in, I know that that love will be coming from an overflow. It won't come from a need to seek love outside of myself. I think that that was probably one of the things that I really struggled with the most through the course of my life, realizing that I felt it was always outside of myself, and it would come through the new relationship or through the next, $10,000 that would come into my bank account. Only then would I be happy. And I had to get to a point where I would say, I can be happy with where I am right now. I can love myself right now, knowing the fact that there's still work to do. Because to kind of circle back to what you had shared previously, as long as we're still here, living, breathing, we still have purpose and we still have work to do in that process.
You have had an award-winning book. When did that happen and how did that happen?
So the story itself, Walking Each Other Home, Zachary's Mission, a Hospice for Children, when I had experienced grief through the loss of my grandma, that was probably the time in which grief was the most prominent, even though I had felt grief in many respects throughout my whole life. I knew that I had a story to share. And I remember, growing up when I was a child, it was very difficult for me to really be my most authentic self. Expressing my creativity was a challenge. It almost felt like it was compartmentalized in many respects. That, just the way in which I was led to believe that my best was not necessarily good enough and that my creativity was not good enough. But I remember there was an author who I became friends with in Western New York, and we were visiting Children's Hospital at the time, because one of the things I help authors to do is visit children's hospitals across the country where they can share the stories with kids room to room. And this particular author said, when is your book coming out? And she was just very blunt like that. When is your book coming out? And then at that point, I became aware, even though other people had probably said for many years, when is your book coming out? I tilted my head at that point and I felt, okay, sooner versus later, I'm going to be ready. At the same point in time, being a publicist, I'm always about helping other people share their stories. So I came from the perspective of, I'll get around to it. 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 And it has long since been said that the thing that you put off the most is the thing that you're really meant to do. And the longer you put something off, the more difficult that it can become. And I remember finally, it was probably around a little under 2 years ago, where I said, okay, it's time. And was very fortunate to have a full team to assist me with this book, having multiple editors in the process, having an amazing illustrator, Roxana Barwinska, who works with both well-known traditionally published authors and self-published authors. The story itself is about a brave 8-year-old boy named Zachary who's battling a life-limiting illness, terminal cancer, and he has a dream. And in the dream, God comes to him, acknowledges that Zachary is moving through fear about next steps and what could happen, what might happen. God sends him 4 earth angels. That's the term that I mentioned previously. He sends him and his family 4 earth angels to help him create and raise the necessary funds for a children's hospice in San Diego, which is Zachary's mission and his purpose in life that he needs to fulfill before he passes. Now, all of the earth angels are inspired by real life people through the course of my journey. There is Jane, the loving grandmother. There is Dennis, the Italian restaurant owner, both of which, again, I mentioned my grandmother, and Dennis DiPaolo, the owner of Elio DiPaolo's restaurant in the Western New York area in Buffalo. There is Georgianne, the animal-loving storyteller, who is inspired by my dear friend and colleague Georgianne Irvine, who is one of the longest tenured employees at the San Diego Zoo. She is the award-winning creator of the zoo's Hope and Inspiration collection, which chronicles many of the journeys of the animals at the zoo that have gone through challenging circumstances and have moved through to the other side to live beautiful and amazing lives. And then there's also Patrick, the Reiki master. And Patrick was actually one of my former practitioners, my former Reiki master. So they all travel from different areas across North America to meet Zachary and his family in San Diego. And successfully, they not only help Zachary and his family to raise the necessary funds for the hospice, but they also teach Zachary about the different meanings of unconditional love along the way. So, for example, Jane, the loving grandmother, helps Zachary to remember that unconditional love can best look like spending quality time with the ones that you love. And Dennis, the Italian restaurant owner, reminds Zachary that unconditional love can look like cooking a meal for someone who's hungry, for someone in need. And so Zachary is able to fulfill his mission. The hospice is created, and he's able to pass away peacefully, knowing the fact that he has fulfilled his mission and his purpose, and that now there is a sacred space where children who are moving through life's most difficult challenges, and parents and families at that as well, because when someone is moving through grief, and especially the last stages of life, it really impacts more than just the person who's set to pass away. But Zachary reminds all of us that love never dies, that it only changes form. And so the story, it's hard to believe it was actually released 1 year ago, which is just, I blinked my eyes and I realized within 1 year, I had been on a full national book tour. I've had the chance to visit children's hospices both in the United States and in Canada. I've been very fortunate to moderate one of the largest children's literacy events in the country at Mall of America this past year, have shared my story on some of the largest national Christian television outlets in the country and television stations nationwide. I'm very fortunate because I feel that I'm really just beginning this particular leg of my journey. Just recently, I had the chance to visit one of the largest hospice conventions in the country and meet some amazing, amazing people. And this spring, I am actually going to be volunteering at hospice to actually start to learn more about the ins and the outs, because I do know a good amount about hospice, but by far, I am a novice. And so this goes back to one of the things that I mentioned before, that if there's something that you're meant to do, just take the next steps. I remember my art teacher at 14 Holy Helpers School in Western New York, in West Seneca, right outside of Buffalo. She would always tell me growing up, John, a little dabble do ya. And I had no idea what the heck Miss Schaffner was saying way back on when, but I can look back on many decades later and feel that that was her way of saying one step at a time. Because we can't necessarily do everything that we want to do. We can't necessarily experience everything that we want to experience in one moment. There's a reason why there's 24 hours in a day. There's a reason why there's 7 days in a week. There's a reason why there's 365 days in a year. There's a reason why they call it a lifetime, because there's certain things that do take a longer period of time to come to form and shape. But when you're stepping forward into your life's work, there is something that is very rewarding, and it's rewarding on the deepest of levels with one's heart and one's soul. So I'm really excited. I finally believe that really the best stuff is starting to happen right now. I always wanted to experience what I refer to as the rainbow and gumdrops chapter of my life. And I feel that I'm kind of at the beginning of the rainbows and gumdrops chapter of my life. Finally, after all the stuff that I went through, that now I'm entering into the rainbows and gumdrops chapter. But I just remind myself, again, I'm no better than the person next to me. And it's important for me to remain appreciative and grateful and grounded and humble so that I can continue to become a better version of myself each and every day.
You've done already so much, even before your book, right? And you, you know, you've been fortunate to work with the best of the best too. And so, why a children's book? Was this a true story?
So the short answer, yes and no. Was there a real life Zachary? Yes. So Zachary, again, the main character in the story. Zachary, the little boy in the story, was inspired by a friend of mine, Zachary Beveridge, who is the former street team president of my wrestling radio show that I hosted, Monday Night Mayhem. He passed away at a very young age, not as young as little Zachary in the story, but he passed away, I believe, from a heart condition that he didn't even know that he had, if I'm not mistaken. And when the time came to have the main character in the story, and I'd ask myself, who is going to be the name of this brave little boy in the story? There's only one name that came to mind, and that was Zachary. And all of the earth angels in the story are inspired by real life people. So there is a real life element. There are real life people in the story. And in many respects, Zachary's mission is my mission, because Zachary wants to create a hospice for terminally ill children. And I do believe that that is one of the most important things that I'm meant to do while walking this earthly plane. Now, I don't necessarily know, as we're speaking in real time, if I'm going to be spearheading everything, or if I'm simply meant to be a part of the team, so to speak. Ultimately, what I do know is that it is important to have a space like that here in San Diego. I don't feel that, 20 plus years after first coming out here and really seeing San Diego as this very serene and sacred place, there's a reason why I'm back here. And I'm still allowing everything to unfold in the process. But one of the reasons why I'm really grateful that I have written this book is knowing the fact that there is a lifeline. There's a resource of care that's available for caregivers who are taking care of those who are terminally ill, for families who are struggling with grief, children who are being introduced to grief more or less for the first time. I'll share with you a story that I haven't had the chance to share really publicly in many respects. While I was traveling on my national book tour, I had a signing at the largest Barnes & Noble in Rochester, New York. I had the chance to meet this elder woman, and I had a very powerful experience with her. She was moving through some sort of dementia and Alzheimer's. And she had mentioned that one of the things that keeps her going is puzzles. And she came to Barnes & Noble because, she wanted to get a puzzle. But at the same point in time, she had said, I haven't been at this Barnes & Noble in a long period of time. And she said, I don't have much time left. And I gave her a copy of my book. And I asked her, I said, I'm going to pray for you. And when the time comes and when you cross over, and you see my grandmother in heaven, please let her know that I've asked for more time and that eventually I will see her again someday. And she says, I will do that. When I see your grandmother, Babcia, Jane, I will let her know. And that experience, still nearly a year later, is something that maybe I haven't even had the chance to fully integrate. Because this woman was not on my radar. I was supposed to have left the store a little bit earlier just because I had to hop on a flight, get back home to San Diego. But I feel that God moved in a very mysteriously beautiful way that day. That woman and I needed to connect, and I needed to give her a copy of the book so that she could have. And knowing the fact that in some way, I hope, I don't know this for a fact, I hope that it provided her comfort in some way, shape, or form. Because ultimately, this goes back to one of the things I'd mentioned previously. If we can just remember that we are not alone, and that even during the most difficult and challenging times and seasons of our life, the fact that there are people that care about us, the fact that life is worth living, that you're a good person. There's oftentimes we can just beat the absolute crap out of ourselves. And if we can just remember these simple things, which really are true with a capital T, then I feel that we can make more progress. We can get further along than maybe where we currently are in this particular moment in time. So I just encourage anyone, if you see someone who is struggling, it's virtually impossible to help the world. But if you can just extend kindness, starting with yourself and love to yourself, and just try to help one person out every day, it's not rocket science. If someone's needing, an extra quarter for the laundry machine, and if you got that quarter, why not? If you want to pay it forward, and if you see a homeless person that's on the street, and maybe you get him a breakfast sandwich. You never know what someone is going through. And that random act of kindness may shift the complete trajectory of their entire life.
It's profound. I don't know if I ever shared this with you or not, but my husband had a chronic illness. He had cystic fibrosis, and before I met him, he had a double lung transplant. Now, it lasted for 21 years because I was married to him and we were together for 20 years. But, as far as the things that you're talking about, what happened in your book and everything, it really hits home because he was a young child thinking that he was going to pass early in life. But because of his double lung transplant, he was able to extend his life for 21 more years. With cystic fibrosis, it's a genetic disorder that all of your mucous membranes start clogging up and fibrosing, and most people with cystic fibrosis don't last past the age of 18. So he was always living to die. And this book that you wrote hits home to me. If he were still around, he would have loved to read this book because it would have hit home to him about all these things happening in his world.
I want to thank you for your vulnerability in sharing your husband with me and with all of us. If I may ask, what is your husband's name?
Mark.
Mark. I want to give the proper credit to an author who I had the blessing of working with by the name of Wanda Weathersby. She has a very powerful book that she wrote. And through the course of her book, she firmly believes that when we say someone's name, they truly never die. So whenever someone shares with me that their husband passed, or their brother passed, or their next door neighbor passed, or their fourth grade teacher passed, I take the time to ask them what is their name, because we can keep their memories and their legacies alive. And there's a reason why I use the term, what is your husband's name? Because love really is unconditional. Not to get too uber religious or spiritual in any way, shape, or form. To a certain extent, maybe. I'm a firm believer that when our loved ones pass on, that we will see them again. And however that necessarily looks like and sounds like and feels like, I believe that heaven is a combination of all of the greatest experiences that you've had in your entire life and all of the most wonderful people that you met in your entire life. So for me, like, heaven would be going to Toys R Us, Disneyland, Trader Joe's, and there's the part of me that would say maybe integrating in some kind of a wrestling event, right? And I'll see my grandmother, and I'll see all of my previous pets that I had along the way, Hunter and Scotty and Brownie and Lady. And I'll see my first college professor, Zan Robinson, and I'll see Zachary, people that I've lost throughout my journey. And I know that I'll see them again. And I take a lot of solace in that. I take a lot of comfort in that. My hope, ultimately through this connection, through our interview, I wrote this story because ultimately, if it can just help one person, I know this may sound cliche and leave it to the publicist side of me to say this, but if my story could just help one person, then I would know in my heart that it was worth doing, all of the time and the large financial investment to self-publish a book, because it was not easy and it was very costly to do. But ultimately, if this can leave a lasting legacy, I mean, not even just for myself and, this was my contribution to the world, but so that someone, when they read the story, can say, I'm not alone. I have earth angels in my life, or I will see my departed loved one again, or that it can be a book that someone can read during the dying days of their life, like that one elder woman that I had met who had terminal kidney cancer in Rochester. And so again, thank you for taking the time to share your husband with all of us.
Yeah. Boy, this has been a really, you think that we're going to go one way and then we go another way for all of our listeners. This is huge, listeners. I mean, geez, think about all the ways that we can touch the lives of others. And, we just talked about a part of what you do. You are so amazing. You seems like you have put your whole life into your life. I mean, we have a little bit of time to talk a little bit about, the new thing that you're doing. You're talking to animals, you know, and that's huge. A lot of our listeners have pets, and we want to communicate with our pets, and we want to know what they're talking about, thinking about. What made you think and to do about that?
Well, I give a large amount of credit to my channeling practitioner, who I've known for close to 10 years. His name is Ken Lewicki. He's an amazing practitioner who lives out in the Bali area. He used to live out in Canada, in Calgary. And I had such a profound respect for those who do anything with pets. Out here in the San Diego area, there's a couple by the name of Robert and April, and they own a pet boutique called Bella Wolf. And so they groom pets, and they do puppy training, and they have, all the different kinds of things, different foods and treats and sweaters for dogs. I mean, you name it, they have it. And pets communicate in such a very unique way. I mean, when we ask ourselves, if only we understood what they were saying, and how many times, when when your little pup says, when they're barking, they might be thirsty, they might be hungry, they might want to go outside, or they just simply just want your attention, so to speak. But I spent nearly 15 hours over 2 days right after Christmas, really immersing myself in all of this, putting down all the busyness, putting down all the laundry lists of things to do, including the laundry, and said, this is what needs to be done. I've put this off long enough. And it's literally been, I mean, we're talking 60 days from when we're recording this interview to when fully the completion of the training and the workshop took place. And I've just noticed such a profound shift in my own life, and being able to now communicate with pet parents and let them know you can have a stronger relationship with your pet. That really is my goal through the work that I do as an animal communicator. Knowing the fact that, our pup or our feline friend, even if, like, I recently connected with someone who has a fish, right? We often think it's just, dogs and cats, right? But, people have
Right.
horses, and they have other kinds of animals as well too. And knowing the fact that if they're struggling with the communication with their pet can also be sick as well too. What are some things in terms of connective activities and experiences that you can do with your pet to help them feel better? Now, full transparency, I'm not a veterinarian, so I'm not here to give, medical advice in any way, shape, or form. If anything, I come from the very unique and supportive perspective that ultimately love is the unconditional healer. And I've just known that from when little Forrest came into my life a little over 3 years ago to now, I've been able to spend more time with them. I would probably say, especially over the past 6 months or so. And, sometimes he lets me know if I'm still busy and I'm not giving him my undivided attention. But ultimately, that is what our furry friends just want more of, is connectivity and love. And it's been a blast. I look forward to it. If anyone feels a connection to connect with me to set up a session, I'm in the process now of onboarding clients and working with pet parents across the country and around the world. And that's, one of just the several aspects of the work and service that I'm very fortunate to do. So I try to keep it simple. JohnMasiulionis.com for those who want to learn more about my work as a children's author and to purchase their copies of Walking Each Other Home, Zachary's Mission, a Hospice for Children. They can go to JohnMasiulionis.com. You can also schedule your session as well to connect with me for a one-on-one session with your furry friend. I do my part to provide not only a 90-minute session where there's a full intake that is taken through, and then I provide a PDF to the pet parent of the specific things that I pick up on and the specific immersive experiences that they can work on creating with their pet to truly get that relationship to where they want to be. And then, of course, there's my PR website, which is for PR from the Heart. I'm very blessed and fortunate to be stepping into my, I believe, 13th year of service in the world of PR and publicity, and being of service and support to children's authors, inspirational authors, spiritual authors, other authors. I've had the chance to work with poets and athletes, those who are penning memoirs, because those really truly transcend inspirational and spiritual stories. If you are an author and you have a story to share, and you are looking to create a citywide book media tour or a national book media tour, or even simply to facilitate 1 or 2 television interviews, just to begin to put your foot in the water of what it's like to truly be of greater service and step fully into your mission, you can head on over to my official website, prfromtheheart.com, and schedule your courtesy connection call. And while also going to the PR from the Heart website, you can learn more about the children's book Spotlight series. Again, I'm very fortunate to host one of the longest running, most popular podcasts in the world of children's literature, where I interview prominent celebrities, New York Times bestsellers, and the leading award-winning and best-selling voices in the kidlit community. And also that's celebrating its 8-year anniversary this fall. And then the sister program to the Children's Book Spotlight series, which is the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast. We remember him and we love him as David Newell, who played Mr. McFeely on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. I know him and love him as David Newell. David and I, we deliver heartfelt reviews of the newest, best, and greatest children's books that are on the market right now, and deliver those heartfelt reviews to parents, educators, and librarians to let them know what is available in the world of children's literature. David and I are proud to celebrate the 5-year anniversary of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast this spring. So you can also subscribe to the PR from the Heart YouTube channel, join the more than 30,000 members of the PR from the Heart families, I like to say our loyal YouTube subscribers, and share the episodes. I call them trolley stops. Whenever we take the time to spend time with someone, I call it a trolley stop, kind of similar to the whole Mr. Rogers language, right? But if any of those trolley stops feel in resonance with you, to pass it along to someone in need, someone who feel can benefit from watching an episode of the Children's Book Spotlight series or the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast. And again, to come full circle, Dr. Kimberly, I want to thank our mutual friend and colleague Ling for bringing us together, because you really provide such a great service. I admire the work that you're doing in the world, and this podcast is going to continue to grow. And I encourage you to continue doing what it is that you're doing, because it is not easy. The podcast world can seem very saturated, but I feel that if you really allow yourself to express yourself, I feel that we all have, I call it a soul signature. We all have that beautiful music inside of us, soul signature. And if you allow that to emit and to express, your tribe will find you. So I encourage everyone who's watching, who's listening now or in the future, to continue to pledge your support for Dr. Kimberly and the wonderful work that she's doing for everyone right now during these very interesting times that we're living in.
Yeah. Well, it's been such a pleasure to have you on. And as far as live, love, survive, thrive, I think you're doing it. You really are. And so the take, I think, on today's message is to really do what your heart feels like you should be doing, because you don't have to listen to anybody else. Just listen to yourself and it will come. It will come. Thank you so much for joining us today, listeners. And I really want to thank John Masiulionis for being here today and sharing his story. And you are doing a wonderful, wonderful thing with the world, and sharing your story and sharing all these things that you're doing, all 3 of your lifelong passions. And I hope that you will continue to grow, and I hope that you continue to prosper with your book and sharing amongst all of the listeners out there. Pledge your support. Maybe call him up, call John, and buy a book, or, call him up to have him help you with your dog or your cat or your bird. Thank you so much. And thank you for listening, listeners. This is Dr. Kimberly Hubinet saying bye for now. And this is Live, Love, Survive, Thrive. See you next time.